On today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, playoff style, we're doing what we do every single day, DFS targets, locks of the night, breaking down the hottest news in the NHL, especially what the flip is Darnell Nurse doing? Did he just pooch the Edmonton Oilers? Let's dive into it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, as we continue to roll out the playoff content. Thank you for continuing to make us your first listen every single day. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele Roden and Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us again. Today's show, you know what you can expect. DFS targets, big-time bets, locks of the night, couple of spots to make some cash. We are continuing the playoff push of content. But more importantly, Steele, on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down some of the more intriguing storylines in the NHL, especially as it pertains to Thursday night's action. And I want to start right off with it, my friend. Boneheaded move by Darnell Nurse, headbutting Phillip Danault. Man, that was like a snapping turtle loaded up, knocked him right in the bean. I'm unsure what was happening there. I think if that's the regular season, that's probably 2 or 3 games. Darnell Nurse, we know, is a key cog in maybe the keyest cog, most important in that Edmonton blue line. First of all, what do you think of the play, my friend? And what do you give the odds on the Edmonton Oilers pulling one out tonight? Because I don't think they're too good.
Look, that is a big difference. The LA Kings at home for Game 6, up 3-2 in this series. He just put his team in the worst position possible. And we knew that going into this series that both of these teams were not going to be great defensively. We know how bad the Edmonton Oilers have been defensively all year, and Darnell Nurse being their best defenseman, he needs to be in the lineup playing over 22 minutes every single game. So he's out for Game 6. He's left his team out to dry. And honestly, I watched that play on repeat just over and over and over again. And just what an absolute, like you said, boneheaded move. Yep. Phillip Danault has probably got Darnell Nurse probably has 6 or 7 inches on Phillip Danault. So he really had to get low to hit him in the face with the top of his helmet. I thought that was just a real dumb move by Darnell Nurse. Suspension for 1 game. And it's going to be tough back in LA because this LA team, it seems like they found their groove after Game 4 when they won 4-0.
100%, Steele, 100%. Look, we both called the LA Kings in 7. I believe we had the same. Yeah. Most of our predictions were pretty close. So, one, we'll take that. That's for sure. We'll take that for our bets and our predictions because, hey, anything can happen. This is hockey. This is sports. This is playoff hockey. But if there was one player other than, of course, McDavid, because even Draisaitl goes out, I'm going to still think that they might be able to pick up the offensive slack. One player on the whole roster that they cannot afford to lose in an elimination game, it is literally Darnell Nurse right at the top of that list. And if it happens to be an injury or something you can't control, but the fact that he did that in garbage time as well, right? That was as the game was winding down, I believe. But either way, awful, awful move from Darnell Nurse. And hey, man, if you were a Los Angeles Kings first-round series bettor, you got to be feeling good about your wagers because at the end of the day, Steele, the momentum is in LA's favor, and now it most certainly is after this news of his 1-game suspension. I don't see it going back to Edmonton. I don't know about you.
I don't think so at this point either, especially at how that game ended in that fashion, over a minute into first overtime. And just watching that too, Adrian Kempe, an absolute stud for the LA Kings, drives the net, puts his leg out for protection, and he blows by Duncan Keith. Yes. Duncan Keith he couldn't do anything there. Kempe was way too fast. Mike Smith was caught in no man's land. Kempe tucks it in home, takes the 3-2 series lead. I think you're right. I think you and I are both wrong. LA Kings in 6 now.
I'll be fine with that, Steele.
I'll be fine with it. Hey, as long as the Kings win, man. As long as the Kings win.
Just hearing you play that back, though, Steele, Mike Smith, Duncan Keith getting blown by. What is this, 2013? Who the heck are these Edmonton Oilers employing? Because who's on the other side? Cody Ceci in overtime? My goodness, get out of here with that stuff. Like, honestly, the Edmonton Oilers are lucky to have even gotten this far. And the LA Kings aren't exactly an offensive juggernaut. So I think that says a lot about where the Edmonton Oilers are overall.
Yeah.
But let's see what happens, because I don't want to count any chickens. You know what I'm saying? Let's just see how this shakes out. But stay tuned for big time bets and DFS targets, because let's just say I'm not shying away from these LA Kings and that awesome opportunity. Speaking of which, my friend, Mr. Rodin, opportunity abound for the Toronto Maple Leafs here. Back to Tampa for Game 6. I think this series is far from over. I think we will see another amazing game. By the way, Game 5, one of the best hockey games that I've watched all year long, and that's not just from a Toronto Maple Leafs perspective. Had a little bit of everything, including questionable officiating, but maybe that's par for the course right now. Steele, how are you feeling? Let's put the Toronto bias aside. How are you feeling this game shakes down, Game 6 in Tampa Bay tonight?
Well, you and I both have this going to Game 7. I think this is going to be, again, one of a very close game, kind of like what happened in Game 5. If Toronto comes out like this, the same way they came out in the first period, it's definitely going back to Toronto for Game 7, and they can't let that happen again, because you were right. That game was actually great besides the first period. After that, the second and third were absolutely fantastic to watch. And you know, not trying to be biased right now, but I completely lost faith after that entire first period, down 2-0. Like, and I know a lot of people out there lost some faith. Everyone was hopping on Twitter. Leafs Twitter was just absolutely going crazy. And, you know, I absolutely ate my words in the second and third period, because guys I was talking about, John Tavares and William Nylander, who a lot of guys were talking about and getting at them, they showed up in the second half of the game and really stepped up and helped the Leafs with that 4-3 win, obviously with the Auston Matthews game winner. But I think at the same time that we can't forget about the mistakes that were in this game as well, because there were a ton of mistakes from two of their best players, William Nylander and John Tavares. And I think that needs to be highlighted as well. They need to be a lot better on the puck. The aggressiveness, I have not seen enough aggressiveness from either of those guys, especially William Nylander. He's afraid to get hit right now. Like, this is like, you know, the basic 101 of hockey is that when there's a loose puck and there's a race for it, you hustle. And he does not hustle to be the first man there any of the time. So I think with William Nylander, he needs to be a lot more aggressive. That play when he drove to the net and took a hard hit in front and like went back to the bench, bent over because he just got hit hard. Those are the type of plays we need him to continue to do, because that's where he's going to get a lot of his goals.
I would like to somehow get what all of you just said put on a t-shirt, because it's spot on, brother. And William Nylander needs to do a lot more when it comes to the small parts of playing the game of hockey. It is not all in the offensive zone. And when a guy can skate like that, and we've seen Auston Matthews develop his game based on the ability to skate and strip pucks, I get it. Different frame. Matthews is a bigger player. He plays up the middle. Don't get it twisted. But Nylander can play a form of that tough defensive game, and we need to see it still so spot on. And Tavares needs to be better. Bottom line, I don't care if it's on the puck. Other than in the faceoff dot, he needs to be better, because he's been solid on the faceoffs. But other than that, and I want to leave it with this, with the Toronto Maple Leafs Tampa Bay Lightning game. You know the track record of the Tampa Bay Lightning after losses. I believe Andre Vasilevsky in his postseason career is now up to something insane like 15-0.
Yeah, so along those lines,
It is, you know, you're going to see the absolute best out of the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. But what does that mean for the Toronto Maple Leafs? A big opportunity to shush this narrative, silence the critics, and put your best foot forward and maybe beat the two-time reigning Stanley Cup champion. Look, if you're going to squash a narrative about not being able to get it done, Steele, how about you do it in Tampa Bay's barn, the reigning two-time Cup champs? It doesn't come any bigger than those opportunities. I'm excited to see how it plays out. We are going to talk about the Wild Blues Game 6 right around the corner, because that's another one That is must-see TV. But I'm going to talk about Athletic Greens right now. It's something that Steele and I are both using before and after the gym. I'm slacking a bit at the gym, but Athletic Greens is keeping me feeling good, energized, and healthy. What is it? 1 scoop of delicious Athletic Greens. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and probiotics to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy. It helps you recover. It helps you focus and age with grace. It helps you do all the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition with just 1 scoop and a cup of water every morning. That's all you need. To make it easy to get the most out of Athletic Greens, they are going to give you 1 free year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Don't sleep. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. You don't want to miss out on all the highlights. I know Flip and I don't. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast, just like this podcast right here. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Once you do, you'll get the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for tuning in. Game 6, Minnesota Wild versus St. Louis Blues, Flip. I'm not nervous whatsoever. We've won. We've won in St. Louis. We've won in Minnesota. So has St. Louis, though. This has been a great series to watch. Game 6, I ain't nervous a bit.
I like that you're saying we. I like that you're this invested. That tells me something about the amount of bets you have on the Minnesota Wild. So I like that you've stayed true all the way through the recording of this show with me. And I respect that because I think what we've tried to do is stay true to the people out there and own up to our picks, own up to our mistakes, and own up to what we believe in. And you have with the Minnesota Wild. And I agree with you. Even though I have some money on the St. Louis Blues, we both had this going 7 games. I don't think you need to be a hockey expert to know the track record between these two, the makeup of these two teams. Everything screams 7 games. And look, St. Louis came off a pretty impressive win in Game 5, but Minnesota still got theirs. And that game, I think there was a couple of teetering points that it really could have gone either way. St. Louis capitalized and took it their way. But I think that means we're probably in for a much closer result than what that final score indicated, Steele. I don't think that was indicative of how close that game probably was. Also, if the St. Louis Blues don't find an answer for Kirill Kaprizov, that kid's going to continue to fly. Props to you for your pick of the night the other night. That banged. So, yeah, man. Hey, I fully expect this one to be going 7 games.
Yeah, I do too. But either way, like, whatever team loses here, obviously the fans of that side, they're going to be upset because your team just lost in the Stanley Cup first round. But both of these teams are very much deserving to move on to the second round, as well as even potentially make it to the Stanley Cup finals and win a Stanley Cup this year. I think these have been 2 of the most underrated teams the entire season, as well as 2 of the best teams the entire season. I've loved watching every single minute of this series. And I think you're exactly right. The score of Game 5 doesn't really show the tightness and the actual competitiveness of that game. It was incredible. I think towards the end of the second period, Brandon Saad's goal was a little bit lucky. Kyrou kind of just threw it on net and it hit his stick and went through the 5-hole of Marc-Andre Fleury. That kind of shifted the momentum in St. Louis's favor going into the third period. So I think every single game, even though the scores have been kind of 5-2, 5-3, have been a lot closer than we've seen. The games have just been absolutely amazing, though. I've loved watching every single second.
We also can't ignore the fact that if you remove Vladimir Tarasenko, that's a 1-goal game. That might even be a tie game because he just went off in the third period for I believe, natural hat trick.
Yeah, 3 straight goals.
3 unanswered. That's impressive. Maybe stay tuned for big time bets where I'll be hitting back to Tarasenko again. But look, these DFS segments, these big time bet segments, they're getting short. We're keeping them short and sweet. hit you with where we're going to go because, hey, they're probably the same guys night in and night out because those are the guys you have to count on. There's no Steele in this situation, I don't think, going, hey, maybe you should take a look at the fourth line. It's like, unless you're really cooking something up, you got to go to the guys that are making the points right now, right?
Exactly. And to start us off, I'm looking towards that Carolina Hurricanes Boston Bruins game. I think the Hurricanes just finished the job in game 6 in Boston and just be the first team to move on in the Eastern Conference. If it's, we don't know yet, but the Penguins are playing the Rangers
recording
last night.
Early,
recording early right now. But the Hurricanes can be one of the first teams. Let's just go with that. I think they do finish it in game 6. And I'm going back to some of the guys I've already mentioned because they have been very underrated. And going back to Vincent Trocheck right off the top. Nice. 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points so far in this series. He's been one of those guys that has just been a very, very great depth player for them. And then a guy who we've talked about a little bit, Tony DeAngelo on the blue line, who was he going to be that guy? It seems like he can be that guy for the Carolina Hurricanes. 1 goal, 7 assists. He leads the team with 8 points right now. So I think Tony DeAngelo, he's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than usual, but he's playing as that price right now. So very much deserving of the price, which is probably going to be over $6,300, I'm going to assume, as the top defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes. Vincent Trocheck, the way he's playing right now, looking around the $5,000 mark. But I'm also throwing Jakub Slavin and Sebastian Aho on there as well, because I think those two have been very great so far in the series. Sebastian Aho only has 5 points, but I think he's going to turn it up for game 6 and really solidify himself as a playoff guy.
Love the Slavin pick as well. And hey, you just credit due. I was feeling a Bruins show up. It was the opposite. It was a showdown, all for the Carolina Hurricanes. And I want to give us both props, though, because we have pegged Vincent Trocheck from the start of this series as an X factor. He's the kind of guy that just does all the little things right and continues to be a difference maker for the Carolina Hurricanes. Good for Tony DeAngelo after a couple of years of I don't know what in New York. Good for him.
A little controversy, just controversy.
Just off ice stuff. So it's clear that he has that offensive kind of charisma. He has that confidence to really anchor a blue line, which I don't think anyone really expected him to do this playoffs. But hey, that's the kind of thing that can be the difference for a team when it comes to beating another team in the playoffs, Steele. So 100%. I'm staying away from this game tonight in terms of my DFS selections and my bets. That's just because I've already been burned by the Bruins this playoffs. Although I believe we both had the Hurricanes taking the series. So we will see. Where else are you looking for DFS?
Well, obviously you've got the Toronto Maple Leaf game. You've got the Minnesota Wild game. But the game that I'm looking at is the LA Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers. A little bit what we were talking about earlier. I think that series ends as well, potentially in 6. But if somehow Edmonton is able to squeak it out in game 6 and go back to Edmonton, I still think the Kings take it in 7. So either way, I have the Kings winning this series. And I want to highlight someone I've really highlighted during the regular season, and that's Trevor Moore. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I can't express enough how incredible the story of him finally cracking the lineup in the NHL, finally getting a chance with a new team with the LA Kings, and he's found himself a great home with the Kings so far.
A real chance, too.
A
true shot.
Yeah, and he's on the second line. He's playing with Phillip Danault, who's been an absolute great mentor and leader to him as well. So I want to highlight Trevor Moore because he's been great. 2 goals, 3 assists so far in this series. So good. Phillip Danault, Adrian Kempe as well. Those 2 guys have 5 points right now. And a guy who I really didn't think would make a difference, but was traded to the LA Kings before the trade deadline, Troy Stetcher, who I didn't really think would be a big difference. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists. And he's a 4th, he is 4th on the team for points so far, which is a little bit surprising because he's ahead of guys like Anze Kopitar, Dustin Brown, Iafallo, those type of guys. But that's someone you can also, for a very cheap option, have for your DFS selection. He'll probably be still under $3,000.
My friend, let's keep this super short and sweet because I was going right to the LA Kings. I really do think they're going to pounce on this opportunity at home.
Yes.
I don't think you want to go back to Edmonton. As much as I still would favor the Kings, why not just finish it off at home? And you can beat this team. The momentum is all their way, and I would definitely be looking to a guy named Adrian Kempe. 100%. The power move you mentioned off the top of the show, the confidence that he, seems to have right now, that's the guy I'm looking to for DFS. That entire second line as well, all worth a look. And speaking of the impact of that boneheaded move by Darnell Nurse, imagine Phillip Danault is actually hurt and doesn't play for game 6 and 7. I don't think that's the case. It looks like he's going to be fine.
It looked like he was fine, yeah.
But imagine that busts his nose or an orbital bone or something. And you know what I'm saying? Like, those are when,
if he breaks a bone, that suspension's longer for sure.
Thank you. And that's all I'm saying is, like, the game was over. And Darnell Nurse, I don't know what you're thinking. It's sad to see that from him. But anyway, Steele, 100% the Kings. Those are where I was double circling for my DFS selections. Big time bets coming up, but let's pay these bills.
Yeah, it looks like Flip and I are going to be sprinkling some money on the Kings for Thursday night. And where you should be placing your bets is betonline.net. They are your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season, which is in full effect. Let's go, Toronto Blue Jays. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, which also includes YouTube. So if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Show. Big time bets right now, where the money's made. Flip and I have been hitting our bets, at least 2 out of the 3 of the bets. So we've been absolutely rolling for the playoffs so far. Hey, one time you didn't make it. So
show.
You're still the king. I bow down. You're still the king. Don't worry.
It's a team effort, baby.
Anyway, 4 games on the schedule for Thursday. I love my bets. I'm kind of going back to what I've had before. I'll start off with my first one.
Yeah.
And I said this in the show already. I think Sebastian Aho has a spectacular night for Game 6 against the Boston Bruins.
I like.
He needs to, he definitely needs to pick up his game a little bit. You and I discussed that on yesterday's podcast, where those top guys like Teravainen, Svechnikov, Aho, they really need to step up their game right now. I think he has a big game, whether it's him, just recording 1 point, but being a physical presence. I still think he has a big game. So my first pick of the night, Sebastian Aho, anytime assist so far. He's got 5 points. 3 of them are assists. I think he has a big night for Game 6.
Hey, I've been toning down these prop bets to just anytime points. And you might be having to pay the minus 170, minus 180, minus 190, even for Ovechkin the other night, minus 200. But there's still money to be made here because this is the playoffs and you can count on these guys to register these points. And if you're not willing to break the bank and really wager something to make yourself some money on these prop bets we're throwing out there, put them on a parlay, dial the bet back, and just collect that loot. Because my prop bet, Adrian Kempe, anytime point, after the night he had the other night, I could see it being a multiple point night for Kempe. Had a beautiful game-winning goal, I believe. Yep. That was the game-winning goal. He's got 3 assists as well. I could see it being a goal. I could see it being an assist. It's going to be a good night for the LA Kings. I'm going to combo Adrian Kempe anytime point with my second pick, Steele. Kings on the money line. This is the playoffs. I'm not going to start throwing out puck line bets left and right.
Yeah.
Not when I think it's going to be a close game. Look, the Edmonton Oilers are on the ropes, but I think you will see a good game from at least Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But I'm still confident that this LA Kings team pounces on this opportunity, Steele. Adrian Kempe, anytime point, along with the LA Kings on the money line. Those are my first 2 picks, and I'll save you my lock of the night because I know you're going to like it a lot.
I love those picks too. I don't have those picks in my top 3, but I'm definitely sprinkling some money on the Kings money line. I too also saved my second and third pick for a combo here. And it's coming from the Minnesota Wild game. I'm taking the Minnesota Wild on the money line, of course, because these games have been close. And I know it's been 5-2, 5-3, whatever, but the score is not indicating how close these games have actually been.
Agreed.
I'm taking the Wild on the money line against the Blues, and I'm pairing it up with an anytime goal from my guy, Kirill Kaprizov. He's hit for me both times. I forgot to actually bet on the goal the last time, which was my mistake. But when I mentioned it, he's done it. So Kirill Kaprizov, anytime goal, pairing it up with the Wild on the money line. But the Kaprizov anytime goal is my lock of the night.
You know what, Steele? It's better than somehow messing it up worse and taking him under, like he does not score for the juice. Because then you're like, wow, I really did mess that up.
I really did mess up here.
Hey, I've been there, but I'm keeping this one simple, brother. And as much as you know I'm on the St. Louis Blues, I can't ignore the fact that the Minnesota Wild are one of the best home teams in the NHL. And I do think you're going to see a completely different side of them, even though they're on the road and you know they want to take that back for game 7. That's what I'm trying to get at. That game 7 is so huge for them because it is at home that I do think you'll see the best from them on the road tonight in St. Louis. Give me the Minnesota Wild on the money line for my lock of the night.
I love it. We're on the Wild train right now. We're on the Wild train. I think you're absolutely right. You know, when you mentioned that we've seen what happens after Tampa Bay Lightning lost with Vasilevsky, I think that's the exact same type of energy we're going to see out of Marc-Andre Fleury for game 6, because this is a do or die situation for them. So they really needed to be at their best.
Yep. That plus knowing that if they bring it back for game 7 into that rockin' barn in Minnesota, that's anyone's game. So I think there's that little bit of added, like, we know what can happen at home here, boys. So I think you'll see the absolute best from the Minnesota Wild tonight.
All right, I'm excited to see this game. I'm excited for picks. Just to reiterate, my lock of the night, Kirill Kaprizov, anytime goal. Flip's lock of the night, the Minnesota Wild on the money line. We're going with the Wild, baby. It's game 6, hoping for a game 7, because who doesn't love a game 7 with the Stanley Cup playoffs on the line? Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. You have to make your second listen Locked On NHL. From first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast, just like this podcast right here. So if you haven't yet, I'm going to say it again. Hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Once you do, you'll get the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available each and every day, Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And Flip and I just appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.